in the beginning, I mean, they lived in Nuremberg, my parents. My father was trained as an engineer, and his specialty was X-rays that were developing at that time. And when my parents divorced, I stayed a year with my maternal grandparents in Nuremberg in their home. My father died in Munich. My grandfather was an old man on a wheelchair. He looked extremely Jewish. Then some youngsters make funny remarks, and it was very ugly. I walked out with him all the time and talked back to these youngsters. He had a male nurse. I took him out when the male nurse was on the day off, and that male nurse was a German male nurse. He was very nice, and he said it is horrible that these youngsters do such a thing to a sick old man. That affected me. That's when I made up my mind I'm going to do something about it, because I liked him very much. In 1934, my mother remarried, and then I moved with her to Italy, with her in her new place. We gave up the place in Berlin. She had a lot of marriage proposals at the time, but I think that the choice was determined that there was a way to get out of Germany. We lived in a small town. Of course, many people were fascists and wanted the Axis to win. Jews lost their jobs. Eventually they were rounded up, but they were also much hidden. When we were in Italy, until the Germans came, there wasn't much to fight. There wasn't much you could do. And afterwards, then the partisans formed up in the mountains. Yeah. And then you could do something. You could carry weapons to the mountains, and you could carry food, and you could carry secret messages around, which you took in your mouth, so in case you could swallow them. I wasn't afraid. I mean, I knew it was dangerous, but it didn't affect me that much, because I really wasn't that much afraid, because life wasn't so good that it was so much to lose. Some things they wanted me to do, and I thought they were not worth the risk, like putting flowers on the graves of partisans to show sort of for the German occupiers that there was interest, the people were with them. And I said, it isn't worth risking my life for a bunch of flowers on the graves. I mean, that I found silly, and that I refused to do. One person, he was an intellectual, he was taken, by the Germans, and then he was afraid that if they tortured him, he would give up secrets. So he cut his vocal cords. And then a certain moment, I was told that I couldn't function anymore. I was too well known. So I went to Switzerland.
So who did you work with to transmit the radio messages? Who were you?
That was a group of partisans in Switzerland, Italian partisans in Switzerland, and they sent radio messages. And so then we worked out these radio messages. We did either the messages in secret codes, transmitted them in secret codes over the radio to the partisans.
Did you always know what was happening to the people, to the Jews?
In the beginning, I didn't know. In the beginning of Hitler, because nobody believed it. I knew that they put people in concentration camps. I knew they would kill people. But the atrocities, it took me a while to believe them, because I thought only crazies invent such crazy stories. Some of the population in Germany also didn't believe it, because it seemed so atrocious that it's virtually unbelievable. Like relatives of mine, what could I do? Then some, they were just taken away. But then in the beginning, they wrote from the concentration camps, and they didn't believe themselves that it would get so terrible. You can't say that all of Europe was in favor of anti-Semitism. That's something they dreamed up here, I think. When I had an uncle in Nuremberg who was a gynecologist and extremely well liked. And when Hitler came to power, he took his little daughter and himself and suicided. He didn't want to expose his child to any horrors, so he just took her with him and they put on the gas in the kitchen. Thousands of people came to the funeral like a public manifestation of sympathy for him. All this made me more determined to fight. What made Hitler so great is that he could say, well, nobody wants them. Everybody dislikes the Jews as much as I do. Later he wouldn't let them go, but in the beginning, all he wanted is to get rid of them. People couldn't leave because the U.S. wouldn't take them in. They could have left in the beginning. I mean, in the beginning, they could have all left. But they had no place to go. And that's why I say the whole world is guilty of this.